Ignition flight. Roger.
Apollo 13 had lifted off from Cape Kennedy April 11th, 1970. The three astronauts, Fred Haise, Jack Swigert and Jim Lovell, were aboard and unaware of a serious situation quickly developing during their launch. Their 5 Stage 2 motors were running normally, but a so-called Pogo oscillation had begun to build up in the rocket, a vertical vibration of the engines that, if left unchecked, would shake them and the stage to pieces.
Staging flight. Roger.
Flight final trajectory confirmed staging.
Roger. Flight booster, the engine board out was way early. Okay.
Flight confirmed, number 5 engine down.
Roger. Booster, you don't see any problem with that, though, do you?
In response, the automated systems mistakenly detected an underpressure in the center engine and shut it down. This reduced the oscillations and probably saved the rocket severe damage or catastrophic failure. To compensate for the lost engine at this critical point, the crew increased the remaining 4 engines' burn time.
We're hard docked, Houston. Roger, understand hard dock, good deal.
The remaining trans-lunar insertion went without fault, and the combined command module, code-signed Odyssey, and its lunar module companion Aquarius began the long coast towards the moon. It was April 13th, and the late-night shift change was about to occur at the command center as the crew settled down for a rest period. They were 321,000 kilometers from Earth.
13, we've got one more item for you when you get a chance. We'd like it to stir up your cryo tanks.
Liquids behave strangely in microgravity. Pressurized liquid oxygen can settle along the direction of travel and turn to slush. Built into these tanks are stirrers that move the fluids about, maintaining an even pressure and allowing for a regular flow from the tank. Within oxygen tank number 2, there were a number of problems, each contributing to an impending disaster. The tank's thermostat had been shorted out when ground test power had been applied to the lower voltage system. This caused an incorrect reading of the tank's temperature. The tank's heater was stuck on as a result, causing much higher than normal tank pressures. When Jack Swigert operated the switch to stir the cryo tank, an electrical short occurred, triggering a fire in the Teflon insulation. The heat caused the tank pressure to increase beyond safe limits, and the tank ruptured violently. The resultant explosion into the vacuum of space ripped the side of the spacecraft away, damaging the other surrounding oxygen tanks and fuel cells, effectively crippling the service module's systems.
Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here. This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem. Had a main B bus undervolt here. Right, guidance. Go guidance. We've had a hard...
The astronauts on board immediately knew something unusual had happened. They thought perhaps a collision with a meteorite had occurred. Their master alarm was triggered.
Roger. And we had a pretty large bang associated with the caution and warning there.
The oxygen tanks aboard the command module not only provided breathing air, but also fuel for the fuel cells, the devices that generated electricity for the craft. NASA had built triple redundancy into all their systems, and the astronauts quickly realized that all 3 systems were failing. Something serious had happened, and they were in deep trouble.
So we are venting something. We are venting something out into space. Okay, let's everybody think of the kind of things we'd be venting. GNC, you got anything that looks abnormal in your system?
Oxygen tank 1 was leaking badly, venting the remaining oxygen into space. This was affecting the trajectory and orientation of the craft. The automatic systems on board Apollo began to fire the ship's thrusters to correct the problem.
Get somebody in the back room to try to figure out what the equivalent delta V is we're getting.
The crew and ground control watched in disbelief as each system failed.
The LEM spacecraft's good, so if we need to get back home, we got a LEM to do a good portion of it with. Okay, let's make sure that we don't do anything that's going to blow our CSM electrical power with the batteries or that will cause us to lose the main or the fuel cell number 2.
Jim Lovell commenced evacuating the crew from the command module to the Aquarius, asking Fred Haise to begin the procedures to fire up the LEM, its computer, and life support systems. The command module did have battery power, but this was usually reserved for re-entry when the service module was jettisoned. They needed to conserve these batteries, and Capcom recommended shutting down the command module completely, something never considered before. It raised many questions and concerns as to whether the systems could be restarted again in flight. Meanwhile, Jim Lovell began taking the gimbal readings from the navigation computer on the command module. Without them, the craft would be lost without any bearings. These figures would have to be converted and entered into the LEM's navigation computer. Eventually, the 3 astronauts crowded into the 2-man lunar module, and the command module was shut down completely. The LEM was now their lifeboat. They had electricity and air to breathe, but many unanswered questions and concerns.
My concern was increasing all the time. It went from, I wonder what this is going to do to the landing, to I wonder if we can get back home again.
Apollo 13 was in trouble. They were plummeting towards the moon, moving further away from Earth with a crippled spacecraft and very little time to decide what to do. Commander Jim Lovell did know, however, that his chance to walk on the surface of the moon had been aborted. The mission was now survival, and the odds were stacked against them. By now, the news had gotten out, and the world's media turned their focus back towards the moon.
Here is a bulletin from ABC News. The Apollo 13 spacecraft has had a serious power supply malfunction that could cause the lunar landing mission to be terminated early.
Networks dropped all their featured programming and broadcast live throughout the entire incident.
At the moment, the astronauts are continuing to try to isolate their trouble. A late report says the spacecraft now is operating on battery power alone. All unnecessary equipment is being turned off.
We'll be doing till we get them back on the water is concentrating on everything that is their lives are dependent upon at the moment rather than worrying about the accident, because there's nothing we can do about that now.
Okay, Aquarius, you're looking good.
NASA needed to perform a miracle if they were not going to lose their astronauts on prime-time television. The people at Houston Control and everywhere put their collective minds to working out what had happened, and more importantly, what to do about it. It was quickly decided to make a slingshot return to Earth, or a free return trajectory, letting the spacecraft swing around the moon and slingshot back towards Earth. This required a minor course correction immediately. All in-flight course corrections were normally performed by the main engine on the service module, but this was now out of commission. The only alternative was the descent engine on the LEM, a much smaller engine designed for a one-off descent to the lunar surface, not to propel the combined mass of the 2 spacecraft with several burns. It was, however, their only hope.
Aquarius, you go for the burn. Aquarius, you're looking good. Auto shutdown.
The LEM's engine performed well, pushing both spacecraft into the new trajectory towards the limb of the moon. The next issue was life support for the long trip home. The life support system aboard Aquarius was designed to cope with 2 men for 2 days, not 3 for 3 days. It was a gamble at best. They had sufficient oxygen to breathe, but electrical power and water were an issue. To conserve what power they had, the astronauts had to shut down all non-essential systems. The craft quickly began to cool to freezing temperatures. Water for the crew was normally produced by the fuel cells as a byproduct of electricity production. Without the fuel cells running, water was scarce. This in turn led to other problems. Swigert developed a urinary tract infection that caused him great pain and difficulty. On Earth, NASA teams and astronauts were working non-stop, planning ahead, for there were more hurdles to overcome. The carbon dioxide levels in the Aquarius, supporting 3 men for this extended time, were becoming too high, dangerously high, and the air would soon become lethal. Special devices called scrubbers, which contained filter canisters of lithium hydroxide that cleaned the air and removed the CO2, were running out. The LEM's scrubbers had been working overtime and beyond their expected limits. The additional spare LEM canisters were housed in the lower stage and inaccessible to the crew. The filter canisters used by the command module, which were routinely exchanged every day during a flight, were of a square design. The LEM's canisters were round. In arguably one of the great feats of NASA engineering, they had to make a square peg to fit a round hole. NASA engineers rose to the task. Utilizing only what the astronauts had at hand, they devised a system to allow the square command module canisters to be incorporated into the LEM's system. It was a complex and unorthodox procedure, but it worked with no time to spare. The carbon dioxide problem was no longer an issue.
The LEM water gun was leaking, and we shut that off. I guess it leaked about a quart of water, I would estimate. But it took me about 2 days to get my feet dry, and of course, I think you were all aware that the temperatures were going down in both vehicles, and it's made for very chilly feet for a couple days.
Rounding the moon, the LEM's engine was employed once again to increase the spacecraft's velocity for the return coast.
Jack, Aquarius, what kind of return time does this maneuver give us? Put you back in the water at 133 hours. 133, eh? Affirmed. No, that's an Atlantic landing site.
The crew had now to wait in the cold and dark conditions with little communication from the ground, little water and cold rations, and still not sure what was in store for them. It was a nerve-wracking vigil. There were 2 more hurdles to be overcome by ground control. Another engine burn was required to align the craft's trajectory for the incredibly accurate Earth orbit insertion. Too far off the correct path and the craft would skip off the atmosphere and back out into space. Too far the other way and they would be incinerated in the atmosphere. A course correction they would have to perform manually. Another issue was reviving the command module from its sleep for the reentry and landing back on Earth. The frigid conditions aboard had left the control panels soaked in condensation. There was a fear of an electrical shortage.
We've run,
Ken Mattingly, who had been grounded from the flight because of a German measles scare, worked in the ground simulator to prepare a checklist and procedure for this crucial and complex operation.
And B, 62%.
The crew managed to increase their potential power by running a cable from the LEM to the command module and using the LEM's remaining battery amperage. The crucial burn of the LEM's engine was made. All 3 crew participated in the procedure in the appalling conditions and made an exceptional job of it. No further corrections were required until soon before Earth reentry and the jettisoning of the service and lunar modules. Next would be the command module revival. The spacecraft was nearing Earth. Little time remained. But again, NASA, and in particular grounded crewmate Ken Mattingly, came through with the procedure to start the module up from a cold state with their limited power resources. The procedure was a success. The crew welcomed the slightest return to normality and quickly prepared for the final phase of their mission. They then performed another non-standard procedure and jettisoned the command module before the LEM. The astronauts maneuvered the craft around to get a view of the service module as it drifted away. They were all shocked to see how much damage the module had taken.
And there's one whole side of that spacecraft missing.
Is that right?
The whole panel is blown out, almost from the base to the engine. Really a mess. Man, that's unbelievable.
Soon after, the crew jettisoned their life raft, the lunar module Aquarius. It had performed above and beyond all expectation.
Let's get it. Okay, copy that. Farewell, Aquarius. We thank you.
The Apollo 13 command module began its descent into the atmosphere. Some thought was given to the craft's heat shield that would have to protect them as they plummeted through the dense atmosphere. Had it been damaged in the explosion? With radio blackout, the ground crew and the rest of the world held their breath, waiting for a sign the craft had made it through and the main parachutes had deployed.
Okay, LOS in a minute or a minute and a half. At entry attitude, we'd like Omni Charlie. And welcome home. Thank you. Odyssey Houston standing by, over. Okay, go. Odyssey Houston, we show you on the main.
A little after 6 p.m. local time on April 17th, the Apollo spacecraft landed in mid-Pacific with a picture-perfect splashdown.
Going through 5,000. Roger, Apollo 13, this is recovery, and your shields look good. Apollo 13, this is recovery. We observed your RCS burn, over. Recovery, Apollo 13 is descending. Apollo.
Through the bravery of the 3 astronauts and the tenacity and talent of the people of NASA, a disaster in space had been averted. Success, in spite of failure, by the slimmest of margins. It also focused the world's attention back onto the space program and demonstrated that it was not all routine. Spaceflight was a hazardous undertaking.
From the start, the exploration of space has been hazardous adventure. The voyage of Apollo 13 dramatized its risks. The men of Apollo 13, by their poise and skill under the most intense kind of pressure, epitomized the character that accepts danger and surmounts it.
Overcoming the critical failure of the oxygen tank aboard Apollo 13 would later prove to be a rare achievement. Other component failures on other space flights would prove far more lethal.
Flight controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction.